Aeroecology is a term that my colleague Tom Kuhns at Boston University coined a couple of years ago to recognize the fact that there's a whole group of organisms, birds and bats and insects and some arthropods like spiders, that depend upon the lower aerosphere, the lower part of our atmosphere, for critical parts of their life history, so dispersal and migration. And marine biology has long been recognized as its own discipline in terms of, for people who want to study organisms that live in the fluid of the ocean. And like the ocean, air is also a fluid, and we have all these organisms that use the airspace, and the air really is habitat. And so bioscatter is the term that we use to talk about the power that's being reflected back to a radar that's being generated from a biological organism versus a storm cloud or something. Well, using the radars, we can look at biological phenomenon such as migration, so we can see birds migrating during their migratory movements, and we can also see bats emerging from their roost sites. So Mexican free-tailed bats form very large colonies in caves and under bridges in Texas and in other parts of the US, and we know on the ground where those roosts are, and we can see on the radar the bioscatter blooms of these bats coming out of their roosts. White nose syndrome is caused by this fungus, which is a cold-adapted fungus and actually grows on the bats while they're hibernating, and so it causes massive mortality in their hibernacula, in the places where the bats are spending the winter. So it's like a really terrible case of athlete's foot. It's a cutaneous infection, and the fungus grows into the skin tissues, and whether that disrupts their physiological processes or disrupts their natural arousal cycles, that leads to starvation and death. Scientists are still working on some of the causal mechanisms of death, but what we do know is that bats that are infected with white nose syndrome, huge proportions of them die.